A memorable campaign from those days was the Ben Lomond campaign. Late in the 1970s, a French mining firm called Minotome obtained mining leases to an area near Kilbottom Creek, was just over the range from Townsville and in the watershed of the Burdekin River. The French company then filed an application to begin mining the uranium, and this was actually objected to by North Queensland Conservation Council in the Mining Warden's Court.
How to strike fear into the heart of an executive. I was president at the time, and I walked in there one afternoon and I said to Adrian, "What's happening?" And he said, "I've just lodged an objection to the mining application by Minotome." And I thought, this is one of the largest, it might have been the largest resource company in the world at that time. And we're this little tin pot organisation. I thought, how the hell are we going to finance this? This is just going to be so huge.
Back in 1981, I was having a quiet beer with some friends of mine in the local pub, and a fella came in with a Polaroid photo that showed a whole lot of burnt vegetation just downstream from the containment wall of the ore stockpile at the Ben Lomond uranium mine. And being unaware of any uranium mine there anyway, I thought, oh, this is not too good. And when we were discussing it, the four of us realised that this mine was in a very sensitive spot in regards to Charters Towers, because it ran into the Burdekin, the Kilbottom Creek, and then into the Burdekin River, only a fairly short distance from the Charters Towers where they take their water supply. So we thought, well, this is really serious. We've got to do something about this. So we decided to write a letter to the paper. We contacted Bob Catter, who was the state National Party member, to alert him, because he also lived in the Towers then. And we said, well, what else should we do? Oh, let's put in a notice in the local paper, and we see if we can get some other people interested and fired up to spread the news about this danger. Well, we decided to call this a group. We called it BANG, the Burdekin Anti-Nuclear Group. And we put an ad in the paper, and over several weeks we kept on putting these ads in the paper, and the numbers just kept on doubling every week. And pretty soon, within a matter of a few weeks, we had to actually hire a hall from one of the local schools to accommodate all the people, because there would have been well over 100 people at that time. And it snowballed, and there's letters in the paper, and the local mayor was upset because it was going to affect the real estate values, and we were absolute scum because we were, branded as terrible greenies. The North Queensland Conservation Council, that we discovered, had also got onto this, and they basically took over this thing then and produced a very substantial and well-resourced evidence for the Mining Warden's Court, which is a state body which was to look after mining. It no longer exists now, but it did in those days.
This was a major campaign. There was lots of media work. We gathered expert witnesses. We held a large camp, like a tent city, out at Kilbottom Creek one weekend, and hundreds of Townsville residents camped out there to show their opposition to this uranium mine going ahead.
But yes, the camp was a kind of pivotal moment for NQCC at the time. It was a brave thing to do, to go up there and camp on next to the enemy virtually. And in the process, I mean, there was a lot of interest. There were political leaders like Paul Everingham at the time came up. When I was driving up to get to the place, noticed that the opposition had taken down all of the signs we'd set up saying the camp's this way. So we had to get those set up again. But one of the highlights of the camp was a bit of I can't remember, there was probably some war campaign word that went with it, but we just got onto a whole lot of trucks and drove into the mine site and to occupy the mine. I don't remember how we were forced out, how they got us out,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was that kind of thing. There was a lot of capitalizing on the feeling that was out there in the Ben Lomond thing, because out in Charters Towers, which was basically hostile territory for us in terms of a lot of the environmental issues we were pursuing, they were at the headwaters. They got their water from the headwaters of where the Ben Lomond uranium mine was. So even some very right-wing people like Bob Catter were on our side, so to speak, and have used that as part of their political capital frequently since then. So those kind of events, like Kilbottom Creek, enabled a lot of people to come together and to be able to generate very wide community support.
One of the other things that really is memorable from those days was the number of people from the university in particular who were involved. I think, quite most of the committee at that stage were from the university, and that research and those brains were crucial to the way we ran.
Yeah, it was a very high level of expertise, and those same people who were, a lot of them at the top of their game in terms of their discipline, were also people who loved the environment of North Queensland. So it wasn't just that they came as dry academics. They knew their areas intimately, and they loved the places that they held close.
Some of the things that are different between now and then. If you were applying for a mining lease in those days, you had to advertise the fact, which is the company Minotome, which was French then. They were an offshoot of Total Oil, in the French oil company. They had to advertise that they were applying for a mining lease, and in the mining laws in those days were relics of the old gold rush days, where they advertised it and you could lodge an objection, which was basically to stop claim jumping back in the day. But John Sinclair, great campaigner on Fraser Island, had shown that you could use the mining warden, which is where objections were heard, to actually win on environmental grounds. So when they applied for a mining lease at Ben Lomond, we lodged an objection, and our objection was heard in the mining warden's court in Charters Towers. So it was like in the middle of, as Lynn said, enemy territory. But during the court case, we actually turned the place around. It was quite interesting. It ran over 2 weeks, a week at the end of October, 1980, and the beginning of 1981. So there was 2 weeks. But everything was different in those days. Not only was it in Charters Towers, we were using ancient mining laws. The technology was so different. Now we have the internet and all of those things. Charters Towers in those days had a manual telephone exchange. So we were organising witnesses from Sydney and Canberra and further south. We had to ring up an operator and get them to connect us. One of the reasons that it took 2 weeks was the court reporter was reporting on a manual typewriter. So the whole transcript came on a manual typewriter. We had to type at the speed that the poor old court reporter, who was there every day,
Speak at the speed
that he could type. And the transcript, which is it's huge, is a monument to his commitment. But probably so. We had all of these witnesses. It had all of the drama. We didn't have in those days. The other thing we didn't have, of course, was the Environmental Defenders Office. So we were relying on pro bono work by interested lawyers. And in our case, there was a guy called Michael Drew who still lives in Townsville, and he was then a lecturer out of the university, just starting to branch off into private practice, but did a magnificent job in keeping us all on the straight and narrow, and leading the examinations and cross examinations. But probably the really amazing thing about it was it came after 2 weeks. Of course, the mining warden, who's the local magistrate, reserved his judgment, and we had to wait until he came out with his decision, and that took about a month. So it was about April 1981. And I think he was going to make his decision on a Monday, because I recall I went into the Environment Centre on a Sunday afternoon to write a media release. And we decided that we were going to have to write 3 media releases. One for when we lost, one for if it was a draw, which meant we had to come back and get a new bit of, get more information or something else. And the other one was if we won. And I slaved over the one about if we lost, and spent a bit of time on if it was a draw, and I wrote about 50 words for if we won, because I thought, oh, we'll never use this. So we all rock up to Charters Towers the next day, and the mining warden came down on our side. He had, we won. And after we'd scraped our jaws off the floor and got outside, there was the closest Charters Towers has probably ever had to a media scrum outside. There was quite a lot of media interest in it at the time. And we had to walk out there and say, oh, holy cow, what do we say now? And I think the word I used was delighted. So this word delighted appeared in every media coverage, every bit of media coverage on the case, which there was extensive. We got the front page of the Courier Mail. From then on, it was an amazing event, and really sort of changed probably the way the organisation thought about how it actually could succeed.
The chances of us winning were so low. I mean, after the Ben Lomond court case, while Adrian was standing out there telling the media he's delighted, the French, it was a French company, and so they had French-speaking folk there. They had the French-speaking representative from the company there. They had 3 barristers. No, they had 2 barristers and 3 solicitors.
2 silks.
Yeah, 2 barristers and 3 solicitors, all on full pay. The Brisbane ones, the QC is being flown in from Brisbane every day. We had a volunteer barrister, and every single, as I said, witness volunteer their time. So for us, the costs were extremely low, and the looks of dismay and despair and shock on the other faces of the other legal team and the company was something to behold.
Sadly, the mining warden's decision is only a recommendation, so it was eventually overruled by the then National Party Minister for Mines, who I think ended up a bit later on jail for corruption. But of course, a year later, as the Hawke government came in with 3 mines, uranium mine policy, and Ben Lomond was toast.
Unfortunately, now we're in the position where the mine owners, they consider it still an asset, of course, and they've actually on the record of saying that they're only waiting for the correct political climate to change so that they can reopen the mine. But exactly the same problems are still present today.